G'day, welcome to Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations and I hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars. Yeah, hello friends, thanks again. Welcome to another episode. Today's guest, Lawrie Minson. What a legend. Some great stories ahead of you folks, so I hope you enjoy the chat today. I had a busy weekend away playing some great classic guitar tunes with Richard Steele all around Tasmania. Played a bunch of jazz, blues, swing tunes, even a few surf tunes. I dialed the reverb right up and got my old Jaguar out and we had a good time. That was great. And also, we are heading to Victoria, folks. So if you're in the Melbourne area and want to come and catch up with us, we're heading your way, featuring a few shows at the Queenscliff Blues Train. So looking forward to hitting the road again and getting out there and playing some shows. And I would like to just remind you that if you are in the position to do so, we are taking donations here at Say It With Guitars to try and keep the podcast afloat and try and keep it ad-free. So if that sounds like something you're into, please check out my website as well, petecornelius.com. Anyway, let's get into today's conversation with Lawrie Minson. Before we crack into today's show, I'd like to shout out to our sponsor, Mr. Billy Tarrant from Tarrant Guitars. Billy's an amazing luthier and he makes some real sweet instruments. I'm lucky enough for him to have built me a 00 size acoustic guitar, which I've dragged all around the country and it's sounding better than ever. So check out tarrantguitars.net.au, Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Let's get into the show. I'd like to welcome to today's show, Say It With Guitars, Mr. Lawrie Minson. Lawrie, how you doing?
Hey Pete, I'm really well, thanks. And how about you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm just pulling a few splinters out of my finger. I was on the chainsaw today and
on the tools.
Yeah, on the tools, and the fingers aren't really what they used to be.
No. That's you got to.
Splinters are terrible things.
Mind you, living in Tassie, you need firewood.
You do
need
indeed.
Lots of firewood down where you live.
It does get fresh. Whereabouts are you residing, Lawrie? Are you in? You're in Tamworth, right?
Tamworth, mate. Yeah. I was born in Sydney, and my dad actually took a radio job working for 2TM, the radio station up here.
Okay.
So I moved the family up here in the early 60s. I was just a little toddler. And we moved around a little bit because it was a network station. So we went over to Gunnedah at 2MO for a little while over there and then moved back to Tamworth. And he was actually writing advertising copy initially, but with a lot of radio stations, inevitably someone gets sick or somebody leaves or something happens and you end up on air. And that's sort of how he ended up broadcasting. And he had a knack for it. He was a great communicator. And he also came from a family of very handy people. They used to build, actually his whole family were from a glassblowing, they had a glassblowing business in Sydney, making medical and scientific glassware. But his dad was a vacuum engineer, made valves.
Ah, wow.
So it goes right back, mate, The tinkering with electrons goes that far back. But I never knew my grandfather. He died even when my dad was quite young. Sure. But the reason I'm here is actually there was a job going at AWA in Sydney, and so my grandfather just packed the family, caught the boat, and they moved from London, arrived in Sydney, and he started working for AWA in their valve manufacturing department. Sure. And then they went out on their own. But my dad, he'd had health problems and he was kind of sick of the family business, and wanted to change, and I also wanted to raise the family in the country. So that's how we all ended up here. And once he took up broadcasting, then music was, well, he played harmonica. There was always music around, but once he started broadcasting, there was music everywhere in my life.
Yep. So he was just an avid listener and supporter, obviously through the radio. But was he tinkering on any instruments or anything, or any history of that in the family, or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because he was an engineer as well with the factory. They were just from that generation. They were all rounders. You know, they knew how to do welding. They knew how to do woodwork. They just had a ridiculous amount of skills. And he loved the steel guitar. Cool. And they were hard to come by and expensive and whatever, and he just sort of thought, it can't be that hard to build one. So as a hobby, he started building pedal steel guitars, which again sort of got me into it, you know, because he was all down in the back shed tinkering away and building his steels. So having a dad who made pedal steels, I know the things inside out, so it was kind of... I got into other instruments first, but it was inevitable that I'd end up playing steel.
Wow. They're such a complex instrument. Like, he must have been really on the game, you know, like there'd so many moving parts. So would he have manufactured like the whole lot, like all the aluminium sort of parts and rods and...
Yeah, he taught himself how to make patterns for castings. So got the end pieces, they're called, they're cast out of aluminium. Taught himself how to make pickups. Did all the woodwork. Really, the only thing that he didn't make were the machine heads. Everything else was, there was a lot of different skills required, because it's not just like, I used to be helping him. You get pocket money, so he'd be brazing parts together, and then there was nowhere locally that did chrome plating, so he'd send the stuff over to Coffs Harbour and get it all done over there. But he'd be doing the woodwork, putting the body together, gluing it all together, fitting all the metal parts, and then, of course, you've got to build it. The pedal steel's not an instrument like a guitar where it's just got X amount of strings and a couple of pickups or whatever. The steel is a very individual instrument. So you set them up pretty much however you want to play them. It's very difficult to sit down at someone else's instrument until you know what changes they've got. They're called changes. They're what the pedals and the levers all do. Sure. So I sort of had a real advantage by knowing the mechanics side of it with the instrument. So it really helps for a whole lot of reasons. You can make the instrument play in tune a little bit better. You can make it play a little bit better. It's a very, very difficult instrument for someone to just take up without any sort of mechanical knowledge. That's definitely a thing. But they're just like my dad always. He just sort of think these are the king of instruments. This thing, you can just do so much more. They're known in country music, but you hear jazz players. It's still an instrument that's just just still hasn't really kind of hit its straps. And the other thing is you'll hear it in pop songs. Elton John will have it there. There'll be the Carpenters. Like there's all these hits until you sort of dig in. It's like, hang on a minute, there's steel in there. So it's been a pretty cool instrument for me, apart from I play other instruments. But to be able to play steel puts you into a good position as far as getting gigs go, because there's just not too many around that can kind of play. There's sort of a handful, I suppose, around the place that are great players, and there's a lot of people that sort of tinker, but there's no one else where I live. There's one other guy, I think, here in Tamworth, who plays, but you go to Nashville and every band's got a steel player. Absolutely. For me, it sort of blows my mind when I go over there. But anyway, yeah, that's a sort of a potted history, how I've ended up
That's
in Tamworth. And one of the instruments that I play other instruments, of course, because my dad played harmonica as well. So, that's sort of in the blood.
Yep. So is steel one of the first instruments you sort of picked up and sort of started getting involved with? Like, was that the one that sort of drove you towards the curiosity in performing music?
Steel sort of came along a little bit later. Like as far as the chronology
it's a pretty complex
goes,
instrument. Like you sort of need to know a lot of theory.
Yeah. I like most kids, teenagers. I started playing guitar, and I was in high school, rock bands in high school. So guitar was kind of the thing. But my dad had a country music program. It was called Hoedown, and he gently sort of tuned me into what was coming out of America at the time. And, this is sort of late 70s, like mid to late 70s, early 80s, and the country rock thing was kind of starting to really get legs. Bands like the Eagles were getting airplay. And, and there were crossover bluegrass kind of acts. Anyway, he'd just come home with a banjo or something, and like, here, have a go at this, Or he came home with a dobro one time and said, here, try this, So it was very much his influence, He'd just sort of turn up with these instruments. And at the time, you're 15, 16 years old, you got all the time in the world. Like growing up in a place like Tamworth, it's the bush. It's just hours and hours of endless tedium. So you've got a lot of time on your hands if you want to practice, So that's what I did, and the first tour that I did was with Buddy Williams. That was in 1979. And my dad built me a steel. So I was already playing banjo and dobro. I wasn't playing harmonica at that stage. I was 20 when we left Tamworth, the beginning of 1979. And I had a steel guitar. I didn't really know how to play it, but I had a steel. And guitar, I had a Telecaster that I just bought. And the dobro and the banjo. And I kind of learnt the banjo really. We were travelling through a lot of very remote parts of Australia, and so there'd be hour after hour of just driving and towing caravans. You're going really slow, you're sort of 60 to 70 Ks, sort of, like really slow. So slow, I thought, you know what, I could figure out a way to steer with my knee and pull out the banjo and get some practice in it. And that's what I did for months and months, driving through the outback. By the time we got back to Tamworth, I'd had hundreds of hours of practice and I was roaring, So I had a real opportunity there. And it really wasn't until I started working with Slim, which was in 81, that I took up harmonica. So and he had a steel player, so I didn't need to play steels. I was playing dobro and banjo and guitar. Mike Tyne was playing steel in that band. But there was a song called The Plains of Pepperminardi, and Jim Conway had played the harmonica on that song, and it was in the repertoire. And it was really just a side comment. He just said, it'd be nice if someone could play that little harmonica part. I might even have one. Have I got one here? It was something like that. It was just a little lick.
Like a little train sort of thing, train call.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And anyway, I was living in Sydney at the time because I was working for Slim. So looked up Jim Conway and said, mate, would you be able to show me how you played that lick, And he said, sure, and I said, I'm just really having trouble bending those notes. And we sort of figured out pretty much straight away that the way that I was playing was like nothing he'd ever seen before. It was just the way my dad had taught me, Because there's three ways that you can get a single note out of a harmonica, and I was playing this. It's called the curled tongue thing, where you shape your tongue a bit like a horseshoe, and you get a single note like that. But you can't. It's really difficult to bend notes because your tongue's on the instrument. And he's going, what are you doing? He said, let me see what you're doing there. And I said, well, I'm just doing this, curling my tongue. And he's going, no, so do it like this, And he showed me this the blues, more of the blues sort of way you play,
The
which
tongue
is as they
blocking
call it.
thing.
Well, I learnt tongue blocking later. That's
Right.
That's the third one. But the pursed lip was the technique he showed me, and it was kind of like, oh, it's so much easier. Yeah, once I
Sure.
sort of worked out, because I kind of developed in isolation. When you live in the bush, when I was growing up, there were two guitar players that were good, and I had lessons from both of them. It was kind of like they were the only two around here that were any good, so they taught me. One guy played all the Buck Owens instrumentals, Yakety Yaks and Buckaroo and that sort of stuff. And then the other guy sort of taught me this Chet Atkins sort of finger picking, alternating thumb kind of stuff. And there were no banjo players. I was it. There was a steel player here, Norm Bodkin, who played a bit of dobro, but not. It was sort of hard to. He was sort of busy, so I had to work a lot of it out for myself. Same with harmonica, not really anyone other than my dad. So when I arrived in Sydney, there was all these great musicians around, and I ended up becoming terrific friends with people like Jim. He just showed me so much. I kind of cut him out of his gig because after that I started recording with Slim. I mean, he was pretty good about it, but that's kind of he was okay, but I just ended up doing all the harp and dobro after that with Slim.
Yep.
So that was when I went full time. So I started with Buddy Williams in '79. It was my first full time touring gig. I turned 21 in Camberwell, and I've just been playing music full time since then. So it's 44 years now. I had one little stint of doing a day job. I did 3 days working at Mayton. They needed someone. They were short-staffed, and I went down and did 3 days. And I was wiring pick guard assemblies. So you start with a blank pick guard, and then you'd have the pickups and the pots, and you have to wire it all up. And that was I just did that for 3 days, and but I never really discussed how much I was going to get paid.
Sure.
At that stage, working with people like Jimmy Barnes and Lee Kernigan and different people, I was getting good money, and it sort of came to negotiating what my time was worth, and I got a bit of a shock. I was kind of like, whoa, I can earn in one gig, I can earn doing this for 3 days, and it was kind of I think I'll just get back out on the road and keep playing,
Yeah.
But I mean, look,
so that's it.
Yeah, they're terrific people, and they've been a great company towards me. But that's the closest I got to working a day job. It's like, no, I'll go back to just doing gigs. But see, back then there was lots and lots of gigs too. That's changed a lot as time's gone by.
That's a great effort, though, mate. To have had a full career playing music your whole life. Like maybe like you said, 3 days of wiring up pick guards, but that's still a music related gig. So
still music related.
Not many guys can say that.
In Australia too, it's. I guess when I started, there was plenty of work. Those early shows, you'd play every night of the week. You'd have Monday off. Do your washing. Quite often you'd drive, not really a day off, you'd just drive somewhere.
Yeah.
And even with Slim, we would do tours of 2 and 3 months at a time.
Yep.
Big tours. And then after that, I worked with people like James Blundell, did about 5 years with him. And same thing, we 6 nights a week, boom, just tours, a lot of clubs, that sort of stuff. Not so much like the early days with the caravans. It's more Taragos and playing clubs and that sort of thing. But still, road crew, 5 and 6. I could be a Tarago full of road crew, Tarago full of a band, and then James and whoever was looking after him. And we did that for, 5 years. Like I started with him in about '89, went through until about 94, and then I moved across working with Lee, and I did Lee Koenigen's band then for nearly 18 years.
Wow.
Same thing, road crew, big
Yep.
shows, like big tours. So kind of saw the best of it. It's sort of sad to say in a way, compared to how things are these days.
Yeah, it's definitely a changed scene, hey? Like touring looks so different to what it must have been, especially like you said with the early days of, being on the road for 3 months with a caravan and no doubt, lugging a PA and all your gear and not having the luxury of having crew.
Oh, yeah, no, actually
hands-on.
The first tour, the Buddy Williams tour, that was 9 months continuous. We left here in March. Yeah, we left here in March, and we got home at Christmas time.
Wow.
we went everywhere. We went to places that you have never seen or heard of, places I never really ever want to go back to. We spent 3 weeks flying through the Gulf country. I mean, it was incredible.
Sure.
It's there's a lot of talk at the moment about The Voice. I've been out there. I've seen so much of this country, and I've seen places and lifestyles, particularly with Aboriginal people, that most people in the city just haven't got a clue about. And I think I'm very fortunate actually to have been exposed to that. When it was happening too, it was kind of, I think, some places. Well, look, there were a few places that were still pretty wild back then. I mean, Burke.
Yeah.
There was a riot going on. I mean, talk about the good old days. I mean, the guitar player in the band was Buddy's son, Harold. We all did a spot, and Harold was doing his spot, and there was some commotion going on. We're playing a little hall in Burke. And he just looked across and he said, "Boys, take a couple of solos." And so we were playing "Oh Lonesome Me" or some, classic old song. And I didn't found this afterwards. He's just casually put his guitar down, walked down to the back of the hall, opened the doors, and there was a riot going on. He just started swinging punches, and he just took out as many of these ones that were rioting as he could.
Wow. Okay.
Close the door, walks back up onto the stage and finishes the song. And I mean, it's the Wild West. Some of those sort of places.
Wow.
But yeah, I kind of got to see. I don't know whether you call it the real Australia, but I certainly got to see parts of this country. You need permission. A lot of these places you can't even really go to. You can't just sort of drive in. You've got to get permission and this type of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So very fortunate.
And to be on their land as a performer, it's sort of like it sort of gives you a bit more. I don't know, like
totally
almost instant respect, or just some sort of like. Place you can sort of communicate differently as opposed to just someone turning up as a tourism sort of venture.
You're absolutely, you're totally right. And that's the thing, you come in on a different level. You're not kind of, like you say, you're not a tourist.
You're not taking, you're not going to someone's place to sort of, reap the rewards of like, lots of money, or you're not mining for anything. You're there to to play the music, and you're there to have everyone have a good time. Yeah. So I think that really helps. Right.
Yep.
And the places,
to
music
this
takes
day,
you, it's insane.
Well, there's that as well. I mean, and I'll say to this day, there's a mob that come over from the Kimberleys that still remember way back then, that long ago, and they still remember that I was there with Buddy Williams. It's just
great,
blows my mind. So anyway, that's kind of like a little bit of a potted history. Just been very fortunate, being able to play, work, and work at a high level a lot of the time. Lots and lots of sessions. And then now that the gigs are kind of actually, one thing I didn't mention, I did a little bit of I did an apprenticeship when I finished school here. I did a couple of years, about 2.5 years, in workshops, in repair workshops that were radio and TV and domestic electronics and that sort of stuff.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so that's kind of where I learnt to use a soldering iron. And even though it was years later when I came back to it, I had that basic understanding of how things are put together. And so as time's gone by and things have died down as far as the amount of touring, that kind of thing goes, I've ended up going back to the electronics and building my pedals and doing all that, which is at the moment kind of I've got more coming in from that than I have from gigs.
Wow. Yeah. Tell me about that, mate. Was that something? Like, did you sort of find a hole in the market and think, oh, great, I can make a multi-pedal and, sort of have a bit of fun with this? Or did you sort of start with small little single sort of individual units and just sort of branch out? Right. Or tell me about it.
Okay. Well, I was working with Lee Kernaghan at the time. This is about, 16, 17 years ago or something. And the other guitar player in the band was this big Belgian fella, Jake Lardeau. And he's a bit of a tinkerer. Anyway, he turned up with this little circuit that he'd built. And he says, here, check this out. It's a treble booster. It was about the size of a postage stamp.
Wow.
And he gave it to me, and I was like, oh, cool, He just started having a bit of a dig into this sort of stuff. And it was kind of just before the DIY thing really exploded. I kind of just got in on the cusp of it and started sort of, we'd talk about a lot of these sort of circuits and different things, and I started mucking around building a few little paddles. I build one, and then I think, I can put two in a single enclosure there. That'll save a bit of room. And I started sort of stringing them all together like everybody does. And then I'm looking at it thinking it'd be so much better if you could kind of pack a bunch of these into one enclosure. And it's not an original idea. There's been a few. I think Ibanez might have had one years ago. And even I had a Rockman back in the 80s that was it the idea of multi-effects is not a new idea.
No, it's not. But sort of compact.
It kind of just to me. Years. Yeah, it just made sense to me that you can sort of pack more into one box. The more you can sort of squeeze into one box, the more efficient it all is, and the easier it is to cart around and that kind of stuff. So it just sort of grew over a period of time, and I started selling a few. So I kind of didn't really know what I was doing because I was just really winging it, just trusting my ear and kind of just mucking around. But one thing that I was really fortunate, as I say, I got in just before this DIY thing exploded because some of these parts back then were so cheap. I was touring and Dick Smiths were closing up. All around Australia, They had Dick Smith stores. And I walked into the one in Launceston, and they're closing. And, just say, yeah, sure, mate, here's a box, fill it up and give me $10. It was – and every store would have – I'm still using these blue capacitors from that store from Launceston. It's like I've got stuff out there that I bought back then that I'm still using. I ended up with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of resistors and all this stuff that they just wanted to get rid of. Yeah, and it was just perfect timing because I was touring all around Australia with Lee at the time, and I needed parts. So I was.
Yep. So you're looking for the closest Dick Smith before sound check.
Yeah,
so, all right, quick. I got to go.
Totally. Yeah. And then with Jake, we'd be talking about the best sounding transistors, and he's going, these G2 ones, these are the ones, And I did a search online, and there was some guy in China selling them for 1 cent each. Right. I was like, okay, well, if I buy 1,000 of them, that's about $10 or something, And I bought 1,000, and I was like, I might as well buy another 1,000. These are pretty cheap. And This is, like I say, it's 15 years ago. I look online now, they're $2.30 each.
Wow.
I mean, I bought 2,000 of them.
Yep.
Well, what's that, $23,000 or something? It's crazy how the prices have kind of jumped up, a lot of that stuff. But anyway, that's been it. And so I've actually been making them long enough now for them to start coming back in for servicing. Just had Nick Wolfs in, fellow Tassie lad.
Absolutely.
And these things have just been through the rock and roll mud and dust and rain and beer and whatever else. Like
basically any given Gympie festival.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of like, okay, I'll just start by cleaning it. And the thing that sort of was actually wasn't too much wrong with it. It's just one of the board that's the reverb board had just come loose and it was sort of banging around. And it's just I'm using a different glue now, so it was an easy fix. But he wanted a little phaser put in, which I sort of did that while it was here. But yeah, there's probably about 150 of them, of the big ones, in circulating now.
Wow,
I've
that's
got
fantastic.
them and I've just sort of been working on servicing or getting to. It's pretty obvious, but getting good players to use the product and have input on with what's going on. And I learned so much because they'll come in and sort of go, here, check this, or could you do this, or whatever. And
100%.
A lot of the time I can, sometimes I can't, but it's terrific to just have that feedback from the players because quite often you can accommodate what they're looking for. And I've just started doing this thing now. I can't do it every time, but putting their initials on the brand as well, So I sent Kerry Marks. Yeah, Kerry Marks from the Grand Old Opry just bought one. And so the paddle's called an M7. His initials are KM, so I called it the KM7 because I can do individual artwork. I've got a friend that does all the art for me. So you can totally customize like to that sort of degree, and it's really cool. People are kind of like, "Wow, it's got my initials on it." And it's like, well, that's the custom in Minson custom pedals. You can kind of take it to that degree. But it's been good, fantastic. And I love hearing and seeing players that are using my gear that are really happy. I've got people like Ray Beadle. Dom Turner from the Backsliders. Stewie French.
From Phil Manning as well recently.
Phil Manning. I mean, it's great. I just love it, And every really great player out there that's using my gear will sell another 10 or 20 or however many, just through that endorsement. There's no big marketing campaign or anything. It's just trying to deliver a good solid product that'll hold up to a fair bit of wear and tear. That sounds
well, it'll
good.
speak for itself under a good player. It'll sell itself.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So it's been good. Like I say, at the moment, that's kind of been keeping the wolf from the door a bit. It's doing a few sessions. Another thing that you can kind of see where it's heading. So I set up a home studio, which is where I'm talking from now. So I can do remote recording. Just did one this morning. It was a mate over in Port Macquarie. He's got a studio and just fly it in. Just did some harmonica for him. So got that going. And then my wife, Vanna Shelley, we've got this little rockabilly sort of outfit going. So we're just working on it at the moment, get some new music out. And that's been good. And then I've also been working with Andrew Farris recently for about the last 5 years or so now. Andrew, of course, from INXS. But he's actually just up the road. He's got a farm up at Barraba, which is about an hour and a half north of here. So that's been great too. Just
Yeah.
playing, working, just sort of hanging out. He's a interesting cat to spend a bit of time with.
Yeah, I can imagine he's got a few stories too on the road. If he would come
Got
out.
a few road stories. Yeah, got some nice guitars too.
That's always a nice addition.
Yeah, well, they were touring. They were touring through the States through the 80s. And like his main Strat, it's a 56.
Wow.
He bought it in Chicago in about 1982 or something for about $400 or something. I mean, you could get them back then for that sort of money,
Yep. I suppose all the super strats were starting to come out, all the Floyd Rose technology and all that kind of fast, ready stuff. All the old gears.
Yeah. These are all just vintage. Like first time I met him, I was doing a session for Tanya Koenig, and she was recording in Sydney. Actually, Andrew was producing the record at the old festival studios, and I rocked in. And the first thing I saw was just all those tweed cases, the guitar cases, and I'm kind of like, "Oh, all right," And Andrew, he's just such a lovely guy, sort of going, I was playing guitar on one of these tracks, and he's pulling these guitars out, and he says, "Oh, what about this one? Do you like this one?" It's like, "Yeah, that's good." "Oh, what about this one?" And it's just one after the other. Like it was nothing older than, or nothing younger than about sort of early 60s, tellies, and I'm like, "Oh, just stop it right now."
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, yeah, this one's fine. It was a 62 sunburst telly with binding, and I'm like, yeah, it just sounded incredible. So yeah, that's been kind of really cool, and we have a mutual love of guitars, so we've got that kind of thing in common as well.
Nice. And I see you've got a few Matins there on the back wall.
I've got a couple of original MS500s. One of them is my first one when I was a kid, and it disappeared. A fella bought it, and I didn't see it for about 40 years, and then he came to a gig and he said, "Oh, remember that little Maton that you used to have?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I bought it from your dad." I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Do you want it back?" And I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No, I've had it all this time, but if you want it, I'll give it to you." I couldn't believe it. Cool. So, and in the meantime, I'd found another one because I only made a couple of hundred of them, they're a 3/4 scale. They're a lovely little instrument, beautiful wood and everything, but very short scale.
Sure.
Perfect for slide. Just awesome for slide because of the short scale. Put heavy strings on them, and and little single coil, low output pickups. You just sort of crank them up, and they just sing. They're just so good.
Yeah.
I actually used the blonde one with James Blundell for years. Toured with it. But I'm mostly using Gretches these days. Got a just bought this. I've got a bunch of expensive ones, but for travelling, I've just bought this Cadillac green.
Nice.
It's what do they call it? Electromatic, 56, 55 or something like that. But anyway, it's good. Great value.
Oh, they're a great value instrument, those. Yep, streamliners. They're really.
Yeah.
With a few tweaks.
I've got a expensive one that's the same body shape, it's that junior sort of body shape.
Yeah.
But the way things are at the moment with travelling, especially with airlines, I just decided to sort of get a cheap one, and
that's probably a good move.
Safe,
Yeah, because I noticed you've been in the headlines in regards to airlines, travel cases.
Yeah, been in the headlines. Yeah, try to. It's something that's sort of just got completely out of control, but it's okay. I just became the unsuspecting kind of pin-up boy for anyone who's ever had anything damaged by an airline. They've been okay. They bought me a new case, and they're very apologetic about it all.
Yeah, okay. That's good they've made amends, because far out, seeing footage of the actual case, that
it's about as much
seeing the actual guitar is in good nick still. That's what matters. The guitar's okay. That's what the case is for.
It was a custom built mountain for playing slide and sort of stuff. Just unbelievably lucky. I was a good time to bring out a song or something. I think I have written a song. I've just got to finish recording it about the whole sort of incident.
Right.
But ABC rang because there's this huge court case coming out about the baggage handlers. They've taken Qantas to court, and they rang me last Monday, whenever it was, and said, "Oh, can you write a song? And we want to record it tomorrow." And so I just full on kind of throw together something that would be decent, filmed it, and then it went to air the next night.
Wow.
So the whole thing was a bit of a rush. It was, the heat was on, but anyway, I've sort of got it all done. And the timing, because it was my birthday, so it was like the 13th of September, the High Court have announced that the Qantas baggage handlers have won their case. So that was announced that morning. The 7:30 report story on the whole thing with my song in it goes to air that night. Yeah. And the compensation money from Qantas landed in my bank account that day as well.
Wow.
So
it's a birthday you won't forget in life.
It's a birthday I'll remember.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. So tell me, mate. So I'm interested in longevity of guitar players. Like, it's quite easy for players to sort of to play what they know and to stick to old habits and sort of not get any better and sort of not listen to new music and stuff. What's your angle on practice or just performing on an instrument and like learning new things and staying fresh and staying kind of like in love with music?
Yeah, no, I kind of understand what you're saying. I'm probably in a category where I just tend to go out on a limb nearly every time I play. I'm the opposite of someone who plays it safe and kind of plays what they know and they stick to it. I tend to just I never know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. It's kind of scary and exciting at the same time. But you do need to implement knowledge. You need knowledge of the fretboard. You need chord knowledge. You need chops. You kind of need to be kind of stretching your playing and listening, watching, learning. But what I do find amazing is like I'll actually practice a solo. We're going to play Hank Williams. We're going to play Hey Good Looking tonight. Now it's an easy little change. I'll practice up something. It's like I've got this worked out. This is what I'm going to play tonight when we do the gig. No, it just goes out the window. And
in the heat of the moment, it all disappears.
Yeah, you're just overwhelmed with options. And it's kind of like as much as you like recording. Obviously different. Like I love structuring solos. I love that whole kind of thing of like make it start somewhere, make it do something, and make it go somewhere at the back end. To me, that's a lot of fun, and I'll really work on the structure, and when we play it live, I'll try and play. That's mostly with our original songs with my wife, but a lot of it's that sort of rockabilly and old rock and roll kind of stuff. Yep. So I do enjoy. I'm more likely to do that when I'm recording is actually work out a solo and structure it and play it because it's going to be played over and over. You're going to hear that solo for years and years. So to me, one of my favourite guitar solos is Richie Blackmore's solo in Smoke on the Water. It's just everything about it is perfect. It's just perfect. So, whether he worked it out and practiced it and, or whether it was just off the cuff, improvising, I don't really know. But it's got form. It's got this form where you couldn't imagine it any other way, and so when you're recording, that I enjoy, but when I'm playing live, it just all goes out the window. And, if I'm having a good night, who knows what's going to come out? It's exciting, and sometimes I watch back somebody's videoed it, and it's kind of like, wow, it's actually pretty cool, But then there's other nights where you just can't put two notes together, It's just like you're tired, or there's, I don't know, stuff going on. So, I would say I should be more disciplined and I should be more structured with my live playing, but I'm not. But on the other hand, if you get me on a good night, you'll get something that's kind of cool. I think that's
a great way to look at keeping it interesting and fresh, and just going with the moment. If the moment spurs you into a certain way of playing, that's more of a jazz way,
Certainly with live playing, that's and now look, there's a caveat to that. If you're doing a show, like say Lee Kernaghan, he likes the solos to sound like the record. There's the arrangements. We're playing the tracks. There's a click track. It's got form. Now, if that's the brief, that's the brief. He doesn't want to hear you kind of, I just thought I'd jam out a bit tonight. It's like, no, he wants it to sound like the record every night. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, well, fair enough. That's the brief. But then,
how do you go reinterpreting that? How do you go reinterpreting your recorded solos? Like, do you sort of just go through the motions and play them, or do you kind of try and curl them up a bit?
It's hard. It's hard to keep it fresh. You've just got to try and make it. You've kind of got to find a way to play it with that same sort of conviction night after night, which is easier when it's your own stuff. But as Lee went on in his career, he was using more. Just bringing in guest guitar players, for different tracks. He'll have Jack Jones or Steve Edmonds, or, the early stuff was Mark Punch and Rod McCormick, and then later there'd be American players. And it's kind of like so hard because you do what you do to sound like somebody else. But you do, you just do your best. But if I got a choice, I'd say I sort of much more enjoy that sort of winging it within boundaries. You're winging it within boundaries, so you're still playing the changes and you're playing the arrangement, and you're kind of, the song's recognisable. But when it comes to, like for example, we play with Andrew. We play an INXS song called "Need You Tonight." Now, he doesn't want it to sound like the original. He wants it to sound like his version. And I play slide guitar at it, and it never had slide on the original, but it's perfect for slide, and if I'm having a good night, he'll just, away you go, you just, keep going, I'm just, as much as I sort of, until I run out of ideas or something. In that moment, that's pure creativity. It's just, you're just channeling this thing, and everyone's along for the ride, and even you don't know where it's going to go. And
Fantastic.
That's the thing I love. It's kind of the thing that keeps me playing live. The thing I love about playing live, that you kind of can't get anywhere else. You just can't get it the same in any other environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, and it's gone. Like the moment there's not as much pressure, I think, like in the recording situation. It's there for longevity.
That's right.
What you do is, it's going to stand the test of time. So that is a beauty about live shows is like the audience, you're all together. You're all part of that same moment. You're all excited or, you're all on the same roller coaster. And, if you fluff a few notes, who cares? It's gone. Moment will pass and you soldier on to the next gig.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's, if somebody says, well, what's your job? What do you do? And it's kind of like, well, I do this thing where I play a bunch of notes and I sing some songs, and anyone who happens to be there on that night will have some sort of memory of it. Otherwise, it's gone.
Yeah.
Unless someone maybe videoed a bit of it or something, but it's gone. So it's not like, oh, well, I just made a chair today or I made a table, or even with me, I made a pedal today or something. You've got something to show for that amount of time. This is what happened. But with live playing, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'll just get out there and I'll play a bit and sing a bit, and at the end of it, it's just kind of floated off into the ether somewhere, and I got paid for it. It's a crazy, trying to sort of quantify it is kind of, but what happens is that it seeps. What you do seeps. This is kind of more of a philosophy of it all. It seeps into the collective consciousness, and over a period of time, it improves the quality of people's mental health. The more you can entertain, the more joy you can bring into people's lives, the more you contribute to a better society, because people are happier. You go, if there's been a great concert on, and then the next day you go around town and people were there, they're happy. Everybody's kind of chirpy and they're vibing, and, and that's what we do. So, it's this kind of a form of civil service or public service where you just do your best to entertain and hopefully just bring some kind of joy into people's lives, even if it's just for an hour or two.
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it, Lawrie. And I 100% back that notion. I think that's fantastic. Because there is so much, it's so easy as a touring player to sort of go, like I've just been hanging around. I've just been like catching planes, driving, sitting in airports, sitting in traffic, sitting, waiting at sound checks and just doing all this waiting around for like 1 hour or maybe 2 hours of freedom. So it is quite easy to get hooked up on that negative. But to think you're contributing, to people's mental health, I think that's, and well-being of society, I think that's a great way to look at it.
Well, I've had a lot of time to think about it. I've had plenty of time to think about it, waiting in airports and sitting in Taragos, and it's even with my dad, he used to broadcast. He was on air for 22, 23 years or something. He just had this sort of wonderful manner about the way he would broadcast, and in his own way, he's contributed to people just feeling a bit better about life, because they tune into the radio, and he kind of makes them feel good, And so I think just important. It's very easy to get caught up in the glory of playing rock and roll, and you're so good. But if you can turn it around and just see it as this kind of like service, then it kind of keeps you a bit more grounded and makes it a bit more meaningful, I think, which I think's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as, I guess, a side person, I'm not sure, have you ever sort of written your own material and been the front person in a particular band, or, is that something you've dabbled in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've tried a few times with some success with a few different bands. Had a band called Hired Hands ages ago, which were great players, but sort of weren't all that career motivated. And then had another band, late 80s, that were great players and sort of career minded, but not quite enough. So in between, you'd sort of fall back into working for a mainstream act. But then around the end of the the end of the century, I guess you call it, isn't it? 90, 98, 99. Thought, right, this is it. Lawrie Minson band. I'm going to go at my own. I was working with a local guy who was a good songwriter, and so put a band together. And putting bands together is just such a bizarre thing. Like you bump into somebody. Oh, what have you been doing, mate? Oh, I've just been sitting at home playing along with Little Feet. And I'm like, there's my bass player. That was it. That's all he said.
Great.
And I'm thinking, okay. And then there was a guitar player who went round to a friend's place, and this guitar player's there, and we want to have a play, a bit of a jam. And I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this music. What's like? I just couldn't quite lock in. He's playing in 5. I was like, oh, okay, well that explains it, and so he became the guitar player because he was just like this freak, and a few different drummers and what have you. But we had these great songs. We did a record. It was a good sounding band. I was kind of fronting the outfit, Lawrie Minson band. Here we go. It was a sort of bluesy, kind of funky, just all those influences that you've grown up with and what have you.
Yep.
And then I discovered certain sort of with bands. It's kind of like people. We were getting ready to do a live album. We thought, let's keep rolling with more songs. Let's get this live recording done. And the night before, the guitar player and the bass player got into this sort of massive binge drugs and alcohol kind of session, which ended up the night before we were recording. And so I get a call from the guitar player's wife the next morning. You better come round here. And he was just a mess. He was black and blue. So I took him to hospital. Went around and sacked the bass player without trying not to get myself beaten up as well. Yeah. And then rang the drummer. I said, mate, the recording's off. Rang the engineer and the venue. Sorry, going to have to cancel the recording. Yeah, the guitar player was, turns out, just a total addict, to like a prescription medication. And they said to me, we're going to keep him in, we're going to detox him, and so it sort of killed the band, it was kind of like just too hard. I sort of tried to keep it going, but it was just too hard, and this is the thing, Lee Kernaghan, like you would just be in this bit of a low spot, feeling a bit vulnerable. This is really hard, I've got no money, whatever. The phone will ring. Loz, yeah. So, Lee, yeah, mate, just what are you doing, mate? It's kind of like he knows that you're at that low point where you're just like, sure. Next, so you're back in, and away you go. So that's why I say I tried to leave quite a few times, and then next thing you just sort of end up back in there. And this is all pre-Wolf Brothers, It eventually just sort of got so hard for him that he just decided, because there were people doing other things all the time, that's when he got the boys, because it was like if you book one of them, you'll get the whole lot of them. So, look, I still host songwriting gigs to this day. It's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is I host the only songwriting night that's held here in Tamworth, and we do that once a month at a venue called The Press. I started that back in the late 90s after going to Nashville and seeing so many writer, open mic, songwriter nights over there, and we didn't have anything like that in Tamworth. So I came back and started, talked to one of the venues and started doing that. Yep. And I over the years, a number of different venues, but been doing that for more than 20 years. I just
fantastic.
Now my wife Shelley helps me sort of co-host it. But we'll get regularly 15 to 18 songwriters each month. Will come along. We'll have about 3 hours of all original music. So,
Yeah.
again, that's something, even though you're not sort of out in the spotlight yourself, you're still supporting and helping to contribute to the local scene. And we've
Absolutely.
got some really good, we've got some good writers here too. So songwriting's always been something that's kind of been pretty big with me, and to this day.
That's a great thing to do for fellow musicians and just the music industry itself, to sort of help prop it up, give people a little space to play. And do you guys like have a backing band, or is it kind of more of a solo person showcase, or what's the deal? Like what's the setup?
Well, yeah. So over the years, you'll be at a place, and one of your friends will go, "Oh, you mind if I come along and play a bit of guitar?" Yeah, so sure, So, "Oh, you mind if I bring an amp along?" Yeah, no worries, And then one of your friends who plays drums, "Oh, you mind? I thought I might bring some drums along, just play along." And it's sort of like, yeah, sure, And then a bass player, "Oh, I thought I might, that writers' night you do." It's like, yeah, okay, And then next thing you end up with this sort of 4 and 5 piece band. And what happens is that some of the songwriters who don't even normally do gigs, and this is probably the one time that they even get on the stage and play, they start freaking out. It's like too much for them. It's just like too much
too soon.
So so what I've had to do is kind of peel it back. So what we do now is got people like Pixie Jenkins. He's around the corner. He'll turn up with his fiddle sometimes. That's really cool. And people love it. And the fiddle doesn't. He's kind of cool. He can kind of hang in there and just not sort of take over too much. And then I got another mate, Anthony Walmsley. He'll come along sometimes. Not every month, but he'll come along.
Yep.
A little amp, not too loud. Just pick along, and these guys are great. They're such good players. They'll just sort of sit in and not take over. So, it's nice to have a little bit of colour instead of just one person strumming on an acoustic guitar.
Especially for variety and for the crowd to turn up and sort of a bit of extra colour. Yeah, definitely would help. And a bit of fun for them as well if they're not intimidated by the players.
Yeah. No, you're right. Because it's a bit of a balancing act. You're putting on a show as well, and you've got to entertain people. You've got to actually get people through the door because the venue's paying you. But then on the other hand, it sort of doesn't need to sort of end up in this sort of huge free-for-all. So I think the balance that I've got at the moment is good, and we've got a basement venue here called The Press, which is just the perfect place.
It's a great space. I've been in there a couple of times over the festival.
Oh, you've been there?
Yeah. It's a sweet little space.
Yeah, and Luke, the guy that runs the place, is just really music friendly. So we're very fortunate to have the venue, and there's a culture. Mainly what I've been doing, but over the years, you kind of it's like brainwashing. Like people, if you just keep on putting on original nights over and over and over, people eventually get used to the idea that, these are going to be songs I've never heard before, but it's probably going to be okay, So you're getting past that. You start educating people to come along and have be open to whatever sort of gets dished up, which is hard, in some places. Australian audiences can be horrible, and they can just be so rude, but as I say, over years and years of just doing those original nights, and part of it is who I am too. There's a respect that comes with it, so people know that if I'm running the show, it's my show. And it's kind of like this is we're presenting it like a gig, so you keep it moving, not too many dead spots and that kind of stuff. But I'm just really happy that we've got enough people where I live that are happy to come along and listen to original music and not throw anything at you. And they're cool, though it can be horrible. But it's like, well, there's only 2 songs and then there'll be somebody else. So the next one might be better,
Yeah. But I think Tamworth as a town has a really strong original music culture, or like a songwriting culture. Because wasn't Kevin Bennett doing something there at
the DAG station,
and down at the DAG as well,
Nundle,
and it's a huge part of the culture of Tamworth, I think. So that's well done for making the most of that. And
and it's good. I've got like my little studio here. I've recorded quite a few of them now, and there's other studios around that are there's something like 30 studios or something here now. So there's a lot of activity actually going on.
Actually, tell me, does the press still have? I remember when I was there last, you could hand your phone in and get like 10% off your bill. So if you're not fiddling on your phone while you're there.
Really?
So I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but I thought that was a really cool initiative. Like turn up and actually pay attention to the act or to the meal or the cocktail, whatever they were.
Maybe they just got tired of trying to sort everybody's phones out at the end of the night. That's a new one. I mean, it's a good idea, but I haven't. Wow. Okay, I'll have to.
Yeah, right. Maybe it's just like they tried it and it was too much hard work.
Sure. Yeah. Oh well, they've been having emo nights. They've been having drag nights, all sorts of like anything alternative. And so the songwriters gig kind of fits the bill as far as all that goes.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of it. For me now, just doing. I've got a gig this week with my wife, just playing rock and roll. People who come along and dance. Got a few pedal orders, kind of crank all that out, and I got my studio sort of ticking over, and I've just been able to keep playing music even though the direction has changed and the activity is not so much touring these days, but just very fortunate to still be in the game. Actually, just grateful. And
so good.
Hopefully, some sort of experience that you pick up along the way you can help others with.
Yep. That's a great way to look at it, Lawrie. Great way to look at it. So what's happening for you at the moment? You got a busy Tamworth, no doubt, sort of slowly getting booked at the moment, like the festival and a few bits and pieces trickling in.
Yeah. Well, Tamworth's usually pretty huge. Kind of bummed. I've been Brian Cadd is is recording. He's got a new record coming out, and I played on it.
Cool.
And he contacted me about because he's playing here, and I so wanted to do it, but it's kind of like, man, at that time of year, there's so many gigs and a lot of regular ones that I'm locked into doing that I just wasn't able to. I had to, say, man, it's sort of killing me, I really would so love to do that gig. But I've got a lot of regular ones. Like that night, I'm playing in the park with the Back to the Bush show. But next morning, I've got the mailto guitar show, which is huge. But otherwise, just some local stuff like pubs and things with Shelley. Just going to try and not just be like in the days gone by, you'd be doing 20 or 30 gigs over 10 days or something, and it'd just be run ragged by the end of it. So I don't really do. I just like to catch up with a few people now as well. And there's always last minute sort of stuff that comes in, but so I think at the moment there's probably I've got room for a couple more in there. Everyone's sort of booking it now, so that's kind of there's some of the big ones that I like. Lee Koningen waits until the day before. I always just keep the Thursday night free because he'll just call and say, what are you doing? I was like, not much. Oh, do you want to do the gig tonight? And I'm like, or tomorrow night? Like he's just, I know it too well. He will just. Why, I really don't know. This year he's got a new band called Hurricane Fall, and they're young guys, and we're playing the Trek. It's like 1,500, 2,000 people or something, and they're fairly new. They've only just started with him, so they haven't learned all the songs, and they've played the set. They did a good job, and and then comes to the encore and he pulls out one of the old ones, which is a song that they haven't learnt.
Right.
A song called She's My Ute, and it was sort of like, it's kind of like when people play tricks on an apprentice, it's sort of like,
right.
Lee's a bit like that. It's sort of like, on one hand, the crowd loved the song, but on the other hand, he's kind of just dropping them in the deep end, just to see how they're going to cope,
Yeah.
He's a funny guy like that. And, I know the song back to front, so I was kind of like, come on, you guys, and they were like, whoa, we don't want to make fools of ourselves. And I was just so freaked out. The drummers kind of just tapping a bit of hi-hat, but it just totally spun them.
Right.
But I think, they've probably done a few more gigs with him since then and probably worked him out a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, Andrew, I don't know. There might be some last-minute stuff there. So otherwise, just a few of these kind of little. I like doing the little pub gigs actually. And some of the club gigs, they're good. You just PA is already there. You don't have to lug, and you just do your 2 or 3 hours, and there'll always be friends that'll turn up.
That's the thing. It'd be a great catch up. You go networking and social sort of time to just hang out because everyone's going to be in town. So yeah. If you're not gigging, you sort of be out hanging out and sharing stories.
Oh no, it's good. The festival's the best thing that ever happened to Tamworth. It was a pretty boring place before all that started, so it's good. And it goes through changes. And living here, I've seen it all, the ups and the downs. I think it's about to start heading into another good patch. I've got a feeling now that we're out of COVID, and it's sort of I think we're just starting to sort of get there again. I mean, the 90s was kind of the heyday. It was just sort of massive crowds and. But Tamworth is very much the Tamworth Festival is very much indicative of the state of the industry in general. If you've got a big Tamworth, you kind of got a bit of an idea that things are healthy. Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty right. It's a bit of a barometer for the state of things.
And it's a pretty broad umbrella these days, country music too. Like it's not just, your Kernaghan sort of style of country. It's sort of really branching out into sort of Americana, sort of folky, rootsy stuff. It's sort of, and a lot of the singer-songwriter material, still that bluegrass kind of elements as well. So it's really a broad palette these days.
You're right. And I actually think it was a good move with the Golden Guitars introducing the alt category. Like Shirley and I play rockabilly. Well, there's no Australian Rockabilly Awards. You're sort of out on your own. There's no industry. Whereas with the country music industry, it's a mainstream industry. There's a Country Music Association, there's awards, there's this kind of whole network of...
It's a big machine, absolutely.
It is, it's a machine, and if you want to get somewhere, it's sort of handy to align yourself with an industry. Well, you had all these alt players like you were just talking about, your singer-songwriters, the ones that are a bit more on the fringe sort of side of things, who didn't really have another industry where they would fit in. They're not cool enough for the pop industry, and there's not really much of a blues industry. Like, they were sort of a little bit in this no man's land. And so the Country Music Association have gone, well, how about we create a new category called alt? And suddenly it's kind of like, oh, wow, there's an industry body here just recognising what we do, and we can nominate and we can do gigs and we can, they have a night in the park there where they broadcast it, gets to stream it. Like it's actually sort of, I think, a really good thing, because it's just created a space for all these alt sort of players and songwriters and performers to kind of like, here you go, here's a place that you can call feel comfortable and have a home where you can do what you do. And so I think that's one of the good things that's come out of the Tamworth Festival is that broadening the genre.
I think it's pretty vital, the two, though, for the longevity of the festival itself, to sort of
you bet.
Help itself out because, country music has been around for a long time. I'm sure it's going to be around for a whole lot more time, but the crowds are getting older, the tastes are changing.
That's right.
So the festival itself has to actually adapt and change with the current climate, I believe. So
yeah. No, that's exactly right. The balladeers, the average age, they're old people, and they love their music. But there's going to come a point where they all die off, and you sort of need to be, if you're planning on, like you use the word longevity, that's exactly what it is. And the festival's been going for more than 50 years now. That it's important to, it's kind of supply and demand a bit too. It's sort of like the pub test. People. The thing I love about Tamworth is pubs will sort of put a band on or something, and the place will kind of fill, or if it doesn't fill, or like it sort of has this self-adjusting kind of mechanism where if anybody has really got the goods, it'll be pretty obvious. The place will be absolutely packed and people will be having sort of a great time. And that's where I think a lot of these bands will kind of get a break or make some sort of name for themselves, or even with the busking, it's the same thing, So it has this self-leveling sort of thing where there's so many people around and there's so much music that if you're going to sort of get yourself known or make some sort of impact, then that's the place to do it. And as time goes by, those sorts of opportunities will start. You become known. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah.
Plus, there's things like the Academy. That's been good. That's been going for quite a few years now, where they, I usually do a little bit of some sort of gig. It's changed a bit over the years. The last couple of years, it's really been kind of helping out with they have a band, like the Academy will have about 20 or 25 students. There's a junior one mid-year and then the senior ones in January. Happens before the festival. And so they'll put together a band because there's a lot of ones that sing and play. And so they'll create a student band. So it'll be depending on, the year just gone, I think they had a drummer and a bass player and a guitar player. So I'll just come along and play steel with them. But you help them with arrangements and just tips and ideas, playing tips and stuff that you can kind of just all sorts of things really. But just give them a bit of a heads up, when you're doing when you're in a backing band. Even like with the drummer, it's sort of like you'll count. This will be the count that you'll need for this song. Stuff like that, where they're taking it all on board and they're getting the opportunity to work with pro players. So I think that's been a really good thing too. All that sort of stuff. Tamworth, they can hang their hat on that. They can be, I think, pretty proud that stuff happens here, where it's not just a lot of live gigs and people drinking lots of beer, but there's actually
it goes deeper than that.
Yeah, there's an educational component to it. There's this sort of, passing on of skills and that sort of stuff, which to me, that's the future. You talk about where you want to go. That's a big part of it, I think.
Tell me about the Academy. What's the setup there? Is that a locally government run, or is it like an education department thing, or is it independent, or is it country music awards, or how does it?
It's the same people that run the Golden Guitars,
Right.
the CMAA, so it's the Country Music Association of Australia. It started actually as a junior college called Camerata that was started by a local venue owner, Joan Douglas, and a local musician, Greg Williams. And they ran that quite successfully for a good few years, but it was kids, I don't know, under 16 or under 18 or something, but it was just for kids.
Yep.
And then at some point the discussion came about where it was handed over to the Country Music Association. It then it got a name change. It became the Academy of Country Music. And then they also introduced a seniors course. And so it's biannual. So through the winter it'll be the kids, and that'll be a week-long course. And then the one in January, the seniors course, will go for, I don't know, 10 days or 2 weeks or something. It's a little bit longer than the junior one.
Yep.
They just there are scholarships. There are some talent quests around the place that have a prize. Like you win a talent quest in North Queensland, and your prize is you get to go to Tamworth for the academy, and that sort of stuff. You know?
Yep.
New Zealanders come over. It's
great.
The funny thing is, there's nothing like it in Nashville. You know, for all the for all the kind of carry on about how great Nashville is, there's nothing like the academy. Because one of my ideas was actually to have a student exchange.
Sure.
Send one of ours to Nashville to study, to do a 2-week course or something, and they can send one of theirs over here. But they don't have anything that's kind of like that, which kind of surprises me in a way. But I know Dave Newton's been working on something to that effect. I don't really understand all the details, but there is something now happening in Nashville. It will be some kind of course. I don't really understand the details. But anyway, that's the academy, and so I usually just do a bit of teaching. Sometimes I take all my stuff out there and show them different instruments, and it's become a little bit more towards this band sort of thing now, where I know the steel guitar is always really popular because you don't get to see that instrument, played too much around the place. So it's fun, and it's sort of like happens in that week or two before the festival kicks in. So a lot of them end up being here for the whole month. They'll sort of study and then do their gigs and drag themselves home at the end of it.
Great. No, it's a great initiative by the sound of it. Get some mentors involved and some on-the-spot skill development and networking, all that sort of stuff. So, that's another initiative, I suppose, to help the festival with its longevity, like the sort of creating
that's
up-and-comers.
Yeah, that's right. And, the names of artists who have come through the academy, I mean, just a few that are established acts now. You've got people like Travis Collins, Sarah Storer, Amber Lawrence, Sonny Cowgirls. There's more, but a lot of them have gone on. Lynn Botel. A lot of them have gone on to become big acts. Plus, they'll bring quite a few of them back. Major label, that sort of stuff, and then they'll bring them back in to do mentoring, that sort of stuff. So anyway, so that's all sort of happening in January.
Yeah,
and then after that's the great unknown.
I do know that. So how can people find your wares, mate? Where can they find your pedals if they want to investigate what you do?
You kind of got to be in the know. I had a website, but it was just too hard.
Okay.
And you can't sort of just, I want that. It doesn't work like that. You've sort of got to contact me.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, Facebook or something. I've got some demo videos on YouTube, but it's really that, you kind of need to contact me and then talk about what you want. Like I was talking to a guy today up in the Sunshine Coast, he's a guitar player, and we really talked through what he wants, and so that's what I do. It's not, I can't sort of just, mass produce something. It's just, I I don't really actually. I'll just. This is a kind of a pretty cool little quote. It's from Joe Malone. He's got JLM Audio in Brisbane, and he said to me, when a guitar player walks into a store and buys a Lawrie Minson pedal, the next thing they're going to do is to look for a pedal they can't buy in a store. I thought, that's it, isn't it? You've either got to go hard and kind of be a worldwide thing, or just be this boutique thing where people have actually got to work a bit harder, pay a deposit, wait, all that kind of stuff to get this thing that's kind of special, and that's kind of where I'd like to keep it. It's so, I mean, 0418 523 490. Yeah, no, I'm not hard to find, really, but it's good. It's kind of it's all cool. Life is good, man.
That's great. There's a guy down here. I just bought he's making old stock germanium-based tone benders and treble boosters and stuff like that. He's calls himself Van Diemen's Audio Disruptors. And same sort of deal. I went and knocked on his door one day and we had a good chat and played through some of his pedals and talked about different models and different components and all that sort of stuff. Got a bit down to the nitty-gritty and same thing, It's like, well, he's got a wait list because he's got other customers and he's a one-man do-it-all sort of operation. So, and that's cool. Because I got a pedal that I had, I contributed to the way that I wanted it to be. And so, it feels...
that's pretty cool.
Feels good.
The, a lot of that stuff is so, especially kind of like germanium stuff is just, like I use a lot of field effect transistors and things, but unless you actually measure the damn things, the tolerances just are so wild that you can never, from one to the next, you can never recreate, and you can't get any consistency. So I get it. It's part of that kind of obsessive thing where, like, with my drive circuits especially, you're actually tuning the damn things. You can't sort of just stick a bunch of bits together and plug it in and hope for the best. They're tuned circuits, which includes sort of measuring the gain components with the transistors and different things. Just to and tolerances, getting the tolerances so that from one to the next, that can be kind of consistent. But it's fun, it's good, but it's a little bit kind of tedious at times. But no, it's good. What's it called? Van Diemen's
Audio Disruptors.
Disruptors, I like it.
Yeah, Richard Turner's the guy's name, and he's got a really good Instagram profile. He's pretty proactive in that regard. But
Look, he loves it. There's some really, really good builders in Australia, really. There's another guy on the Sunshine Coast.
Dasatronics down in Melbourne, is it?
Sorry, his name. He's Turner is the brand name, but he does tube sort of overdrive pedals. But he's up near Gympie. But same thing, it's good. It's like this great sort of local industry that's getting going.
Yep.
And happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it's a family with welcome arms, no doubt.
Yeah, I think so. I share information. I've been really fortunate to just connect with some pretty cluey people that have just been helpful. And I think this part of sort of getting back to what we were talking about before, but part of why I'm happy to share information and kind of give people my time is because other people have done that for me. Yeah. And so, you kind of feel in the end it kind of balances itself out.
Yeah. That's great.
Good.
Well, speaking of giving each other time, you've given me plenty of time today, Lawrie. So thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, no, that's right. Pete, are you going to be playing in Tamworth? Are you coming up?
I don't have any plans this year to get up there, but
okay.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we go.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I have done.
Well, make sure you let me know if you're going to be coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, if you're ever down Tassie doing shows, I'm sure you come down on the regular. So, yeah, if you ever need like an extra jacket, to keep let me know.
Yeah. Oh, my wife and I are going to Ireland next month, so
oh, sweet.
I might. So I've got all my Tassie wardrobe already packed, so totally organised.
Perfect.
Oh, good on you, mate. Good on you for putting all this together. Hopefully, there's some people out there who'll find it interesting.
I'm sure there will be. Yeah, it's surprising the numbers on the stats. So I'll keep pushing them out, and people keep listening. So happy days.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, no, good on you, buddy.
Cool. Thanks,
all
Lawrie.
right, signing off.
Okay.
Catch
you later. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.